And I remember telling Barbara, I was like, you got to put Aaman in charge here. He's got to be the guy that's in charge. Everybody else can fit in around him, but he's the one that's got somewhere to go.
I would mandate must be played at a ground that has brick and mortar. This is 2024.
Welcome back to this exciting episode on the Reverse Scoop podcast, where we're going over a topic that's very close to my heart and the heart of every American cricket fan. But before we get into it, have you ever wondered why a sports-obsessed nation, baseball, football, basketball, and cricket, one of the most popular sports in the world, is still on the fringes here in America? Well, we've got three of the best cricketing sports journalist minds to tell you why that's joining us tonight. And first up is the legend who is the most recognized name in American cricket journalism. If there's a story in USA cricket, guess who's breaking it? This guy right here. We're going to invite him on board right now, Mr. Peter Della Penna. Welcome on the show, brother. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me tonight.
I'm okay, Nabil. I have to make one correction, though. You said three of the best minds in American cricket journalism. I don't know if I would call myself the best. I would just say that I'm one of the three who has time on his hands while I've got nothing to do in a hotel room in the Netherlands while I'm waiting for the next USA match to start.
That's right, which is tomorrow morning. So we're going to discuss that a little bit, but absolutely, we're here just talking cricket, man. And up next, we've got, Aaman Patel, a rising star in the American cricket commentary scene, who's proving that youth and passion can indeed carve out a space for cricket in American sports landscape. Aaman, welcome to the show, brother. Again, this is your second time on the pod. And thank you again for joining me tonight on this star-studded podcast that we have going on tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Nabil. It's good to be back on, this time with the Godfather himself. I like to call Peter. I've always referred to him as the Godfather of American cricket journalism. So good to be on with him and excited to be back on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. And then finally, we've got Mr. Nate Hayes, a former baseball player who found his true love in cricket. Nate now brings his unique perspective to the game as both commentator and writer for emerging cricket. So, Nate, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nabil. I wouldn't call me a former baseball player unless you also call Peter a former baseball manager. Basically, I played Division I baseball in college, but so in that sense.
But both are true. I technically am a former baseball manager.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know what I mean. It's we've all been involved in sports and then Aaman also involved in sports in college with the UNC. So we've all had the collegiate sports experience in some way or another, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. On point there, man. And shout out to your guys' podcast, man. Big Inning Podcast that I forgot to put out on my intro. So I just realized it. Make sure you guys check it out. Nate and Aaman do their own podcast as well. I'll link it in the description for you guys. So make sure you give, Nate and Aaman some love. Check out their content. It's awesome. And obviously we've got Peter on, Facebook covering every story there is. A bit controversial at times, which we're going to get into tonight, Peter. There's some questions that obviously, from the fans world, right, are there. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And we're going to talk to these guys about their journey.
Controversy, me? Controversy never. No idea what you're talking about.
American cricket controversy? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that can't exist, right? We're the American cricket crossover, man. Cricket meets America. Tonight, we're going to cover, some cricketing journeys because these guys have relevant cricketing journeys, very specific perspectives that can help the average American viewer understand cricket and really, walk you guys through the path because cricket's here to stay in America, right? And these guys have been at the forefront of covering it and doing it for everybody. So we're going to talk to them about their journeys. We're going to talk about the growth here in America. We're going to talk, cricket versus baseball, one of the great debates, right? I'm sure Nate would have some perspectives there for us. And obviously the politics in cricket in USA, that's been a problem. And obviously the future of cricket in the USA. So, we're going to get into this journey of cricket, guys. I want to first ask Peter. Peter, what's your secret, man, behind becoming the most recognized name in American cricket sports journalism?
I hinted at this earlier. I'm somebody who has an awful lot of time in my hands to cover American cricket. I don't know if it's something that people who not to denigrate Nate and Aaman, but people who are of sound mind, sane mental health, and have no time on their hands typically don't go to cricket. They find other things to do with their lives. I think we're a bit strange, the three of us, in some way. All kidding aside, the story for me goes back to, I think, in 2008 is where it really begins in terms of American cricket. I mean, I didn't discover cricket until I was in university. I spent a semester abroad in Australia, and that's where I really discovered cricket. But in terms of American cricket, at that point in time, I had no idea American cricket existed. And there's a story I tell people that when I was flying back from Sydney on the end of my semester abroad to Los Angeles on a 16-hour Qantas flight in 2006, now it's just January 2006 at the end of my semester abroad, they had a 2-hour Ashes documentary that was done by SBS. It was like a highlights montage collection of all 5 tests. On my 16-hour flight from Sydney back to Los Angeles before then going back to New Jersey, I watched that SBS documentary that was available on the Qantas flight options. I watched it 8 times in a row on a loop because I thought to myself, cricket doesn't exist in America, and this might be the last opportunity I get to see cricket. So I have to watch this 8 times in a row to burn it into my mind, almost like the highlights of each wicket in 4 and 6 were like a song lyric. And I have to keep listening over and over and over like it's a soundtrack or an album, that I need to remember all the words and I need to remember all the lyrics to this incredible 5-test series that I've watched and has become the springboard for me loving cricket. Then I got back to the U.S. I discovered that cricket does exist. That's where I discovered Willow TV, and I joined the Omaha Cricket Club when I got back to Nebraska because I was doing my university. I went to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. So I got on Google and I was searching, is there a cricket league in Nebraska? And I found out that there was, in fact, a league that it wasn't necessarily Nebraska League. It was a league that was Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas. It was the Midwest Cricket League is what it was called, I believe, at the time. So that was my initial introduction into kind of cricket culture in America. But then in terms of the U.S. national team, I still don't think it really dawned on me that there was a U.S. national team per se. I clearly could find club cricket, but it wasn't, I had really very little concept of American national team cricket. I went to England for the first time in 2008. After I graduated, I thought to myself, I graduated December 2007. I was a bit stupid. It took 4.5 years. I can't blame it on us being a semester abroad. It was actually because there were a couple courses that I was failing during my 4 years at Creighton that I withdrew from those courses before the midway point of the semester, so I couldn't actually get credit for an F. That was the loophole I figured out. And so
Nice.
it wouldn't harm my GPA if I started the semester in August and I withdrew by mid-October. I wasn't going to get an F on a course I was on track to fail. But I did that too many times that I wound up costing me an extra semester's worth of tuition to graduate on time, or not on time, as it were, just to graduate, period. And so after I graduated, I thought I need to go to England to get a job in cricket, because there's no jobs in cricket in America. And so I got a visa to go to London for the summer of 2008, in part because I wanted to have an authentic cricket experience playing club cricket on actual turf wickets and actually well-maintained outfields, and not the 6-inch high grass and artificial wickets I was used to in Nebraska. Like there are in a lot of other places in America, I soon discovered it's not just exclusive to Nebraska that those are the conditions that exist. I went to England, and the funny thing was, at the time I went to England, again, I thought, I need to try and pursue a job in British cricket journalism, and I'm not going to get a job in the US. And at that time, when I arrived in the end of March in 2008, I had no idea that USA was actually playing in Jersey a few months later at World Cricket League Division 5, which turned out to be a very consequential tournament historically in the grand scheme of cricket, because that's where Afghanistan got their launch pad to go from Division 5 up to Division 1 to get ODI status and do the amazing things they've done since then. USA was there, and it would have been a short plane ride for me to go from London to Jersey to cover USA, except for the fact that I didn't know a USA national team existed at that point in time. And it wasn't until I got back to America at the end of the summer of 2008, and I was looking for jobs. I wanted to, again, pursue a job in sports journalism, because when I was trying to pursue a job in England for cricket, everybody laughed at me. They thought, this is a joke. What, is this American know about cricket? He doesn't know anything about cricket. We've got however many thousand men in England who know about cricket. We can trust that if we pay them, they'll know what they're talking about. We don't have to worry about, is this guy conning us? Is he scamming us?
Yeah.
Is this not he's trying to pull? And so I came back to the US. That's where in kind of late 2008, early 2009, I discovered there was a U.S. national team for the first time. And I was just really curious, just going on Crick Info and going on some other sites. And, I saw this name from, again, a tournament that happened later in 2008. In November 2008, USA, again, hosted a tournament in Florida, the America's Division I tournament. I didn't know about it. So this was like late 2008, early 2009 that I finally discovered this USA national team. I'm researching the scores. SS Nadkarni scored 197 against Suriname. Who the hell is SS Nadkarni? And why don't I know about him? How could a guy score 197 for USA and I haven't heard about him? Like, why is there no publicity for this? And I thought it's odd. And so I went during the spring. I was looking for a cricket club to join. In the process of doing that, in New Jersey, I'm back in New Jersey now. I grew up in New Jersey, and so I'm back in New Jersey after graduation looking for a job. And I'm going to join a cricket club, trying to find a cricket club to join. And I go to this indoor session in Edison, Somerset, New Jersey for a practice session because our practice match got rained out. And I met the owner of the facility there, and he owned a website called Dream Cricket. And he said, hey, why don't you write for us? And we'll even pay you for it. I was like, really? Wow, This is amazing. So I started to write just general articles about IPL and other things in cricket. And then I had heard from a friend of mine who was umpiring at the USA Under-19 National Championships that May in 2009 that were in New York at Spring Creek Park and a couple other facilities around New York City. You got to look at these kids. This is amazing. I'm umpiring the Under-19 National Championship. Like, oh my God, there's so much amazing talent. I wasn't going to go because that was the same weekend as the IPL final. So the tournament was Memorial Day weekend. The tournament was going to go Friday to Monday. And I'm like, I don't want to watch the IPL. I think Adam Gilchrist is like one of my heroes, and he was captaining Deccan Chargers, and they were going to win the IPL that year. But I thought, all right, Memorial Day Monday. IPL final was on a Sunday. Memorial Day Monday, there was nothing to do. I thought, I still don't have a job. Why don't I go cover these under-19 players at the national championship? It's the last day. That's the final. So I drove out to New York. What was very apparent to me, and it was kind of sad, was that nobody was covering these kids. There was a lot of talent. There was a lot of exciting players to cover. And I got there, and I was the only person there covering it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, where's the media? Why isn't anybody covering this? And I got to interviewing a lot of the players and their families. And two things I discovered very quickly. One, there was a hell of a lot of chaos and dysfunction. That was immediate. Some of the first things I was hearing getting quotes about were, I got to the ground. Now, I got to the ground. This was very American cricket of me. After having played a lot of club cricket in Nebraska, I thought, oh, the match is scheduled to start at 10 o'clock. There's no way it's going to start at 10 o'clock. Like, I can show up.
Yeah.
and sure enough, I show up an hour and a half late. I had overslept, but I wasn't worried. I was like, it's an hour and a half late. That's nothing. Like, and I show up, and the match is only in like the 8th over. And I asked around, like, yeah, did the match start late for some reason? And they said, yeah. And I said, what happened? And they said, the umpires forgot to bring stumps to the ground. And interesting.
You can't make this stuff up, man.
For a tournament final, and so immediately there was just things that you don't expect to happen in a professionally run event, a national championship, and
Can't believe it. Unbelievable.
And I start talking to other kids, and they're like, "Well, if you think the stumps not being brought to the ground to start on time was bad, you should have seen the tournament banquet 2 nights ago, and like 3 of the 8 teams didn't get fed because they ran out of food." And there's another match that happened where it started an hour late because the umpires didn't bring match balls to the ground. And then there was another match that started late because the umpires didn't even show up. They were at the wrong ground because they had double booked umpires. They had booked the same umpires to umpire 2 separate matches. And so the match was delayed because they needed to find 2 substitute umpires because obviously the ones they booked can't be in both places at the same. So there were so many things that were happening. I thought, Jesus, God, like, why is this stuff not being communicated publicly? Like, somebody should be reporting this. And then interviewing a lot of the players afterwards who were subsequently selected for the USA Under-19 national team that was going to go up to the World Cup qualifier in July of that summer in Toronto. One of the things that was communicated with the editor of Dream Cricket was, hey, you should be writing some features and some profiles about these kids. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is amazing. And a lot of the kids actually lived in New York and New Jersey, so I could drive to meet them in person, interview them face-to-face, interview sources and family members and coaches and other people to write well fleshed out features. And every kid I interviewed would ask me at the end of it, are you coming to Toronto? 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 So are you coming to Toronto? Are you going to come to the qualifier? Every time I said no, but my excuse was really pathetic. It was, why aren't you coming? It's like, oh, well, I don't really have a job and I can't afford to come to Toronto to cover you, which was just so lame. And it was true. I didn't have a job. It was right at the height of the global financial crisis. A lot of jobs were just very difficult to have and they still are to this day. But at the time, I was the main source of my income was substitute teaching and babysitting at the time. Okay. And so outside of doing those two things, I had nothing to do. And I thought to myself, yes, I'm poor. My bank account only has a couple $100s in it right now. But other than that, do I really have a reason to not be in Toronto? And so I thought to myself, well, I can't really afford to like pay for a hotel room. I got to find a way. And my brother was getting married that summer. I got two brothers. One of them was getting married that summer. And his best man was Canadian. And he was from Toronto. And he lived in Toronto. So I said to my brother, hey, talk to Evan. Do you think he would let me stay with him? Because this is the only way I'm going to be able to cover this tournament. And I'm trying to carve out a start in cricket reporting, and otherwise I can't do this. And he says, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. I called up, message Evan. He said, yeah, come on up. We've got a spare room. You can sleep there. You got a full bed. You don't even have to sleep on the couch. And I was like, oh, this is first class. I feel like I'm rich. And, he hosted me, and that made that possible. Even something as little as saving $400 or $500 on a hotel room for a week made covering that tournament possible. And I went up there, and I'm prehistoric in a sense. But at that point in time, like, we didn't have a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot. So I was just texting updates to the editor of Dream Cricket on my phone, and he was just posting them in a chat message board that was on the Dream Cricket website at the time. Apparently, this was getting loads of traffic because nobody was doing this. This was like incredible. Crick Info wasn't even covering these games live. He was like, I was sending these messages, and I'm like, every text message I send from Canada counts as an international text. It's like a 50 cents a text. I'm freaking poor. Like, I don't know if I can do this for a whole week. And he's like, I'll cover it. I'll cover your expenses. Don't worry about it. I was like, oh, okay. And I've got my phone bill covered. And so sent all these texts. That week of coverage, it became very apparent to me from what he was telling me from the traffic that, like, nobody's covering U.S. cricket. Like, there's a demand for it, but also there's a big gap in the market. Like, people are coming to you as a source of information because nobody else is providing information. It became very quickly apparent to me that, like, oh, I've got a real opportunity here. Like, this is my gateway into cricket reporting, because initially my dream was to cover Australia. I spent a semester abroad in Australia, written a lot about Australia after that semester abroad, and my heroes were Ricky Ponting and Shane Warne and all that stuff, and I wanted to cover Australia, and I didn't think a cricket job existed in America. And then I went through that experience in England, and it was, what do you know about cricket, you joker, you yank, you dumb American? And I realized, like, gee, if I go to Australia, am I going to be treated the same way? And nobody's going to take me seriously. So maybe I need to come a bit closer to my roots. I am American after all. American cricket is calling out to me in a sense. And so I started covering the U.S. national tournaments later that summer. And then, it went from being me paying my own way to go to Toronto, or the next tournament I covered was in Washington, D.C. And again, I was lucky enough that one of my roommates at Creighton was living in just over in Baltimore, and the grounds were in Maryland. And I stayed on his couch. I feared for my life because he had a pit bull as a pet, and I thought the thing was going to eat my face in the middle of the night. But I was willing to take the risk, because if I could save $50 a night on a hotel room by sleeping on Connor's couch, then Connor, thank you very much. And during that tournament, again, I paid my way down there. Yeah. Gas, I covered my gas and food, and my food consisted of going to a Chinese restaurant and just paying $1 for white rice. I couldn't afford the actual entree itself. I could only afford the white rice to save money on these tours. And so I was trying to save literally any money I could. Midway through that tournament, the editor of Dream Cricket says, hey, how would you like to go cover the next USA Cricket National Championship, Western Conference Championship in Minneapolis? And I said, Minneapolis? I'm not driving out there. He says, of course you're not driving out there. We're going to pay for a plane ticket for you and a rental car. And we're going to pay your other expenses. And yeah, you can get the actual chicken instead of just the white rice. That's how much we think of you. I was like, whoa, I guess so. And so, and then more things started happening. And by the end of the summer, Crick Info had reached out to me and offered to have me start writing for them, covering U.S. cricket. Bring a 20-minute answer to a conclusion here. It was basically a sense of, nobody's covering U.S. cricket. And I mean, to this day, who else do you have in this star-studded podcast, as you called it. You've got two other guys here who make up 50% of the U.S. cricket reporting ecosystem, essentially. we've got the three of us. We've got Smith Patel. It's great to have that Nabil is doing a podcast, and other people have started to do podcasts, which I think is fantastic. You don't need two hands to count all the people who are covering American cricket on a consistent basis. It used to be you didn't even need one hand. Now this is how much cricket has grown in American appeal. Now we've moved past 5 fingers and we're approaching 10 fingers to count all the people who are covering American cricket, which is fantastic. And that's a huge change in the 15 years I've been covering American cricket. I love doing these things, like coming on a podcast like this and interacting with like-minded people, because my opinion, my philosophy is a rising tide floats all boats. And I think I have great relationships with Aaman and Nate and Smith Patel, and I get excited when I see more people covering cricket. It's not a case of, no, I have the monopoly on this. Get out of here. You're not allowed to do this. No, we need more, and the more the merrier.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. What a wonderful story, man. It's something to learn from for younger guys, for guys that are covering cricket right now, right? You said numbers have doubled, right? From 5 to 10 maybe now that are covering US cricket, so much to learn from that story. And thank you for being so honest, Peter, because obviously, we can all learn from this, and the future hopefully is brighter, for future reporters and young guys like Aaman, are going to be, leading those younger guys in the future as well. So we have, like a passing of baton as well, and the learning being shared and information being shared. I think that's what it's all about. And the numbers, will grow eventually, man. I'm a believer. You're a believer. We're all here, trying to grow this game. So I want to get a perspective from Aaman now. Aaman, we've heard Peter's story, amazing story. First off, your thoughts on his journey and, how it connects a little bit with your journey and how you really got into start following cricket at a young age. And was Peter a part of, obviously, your learnings when you started in the scene?
Yeah, I think, Peter's story and mine are similar in the sense of it's kind of a lot of random events kind of happening that ended up pushing things together. Mine happened a little earlier. It was more high school. It was more towards the end of high school for me, where I was like I had to apply to colleges, and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. And I said, I have this kind of one passion that I want to go after it. Sports journalism was always something I wanted to do. And so I said, I'll start a podcast and just kind of try it out. Got a chance to do kind of the NYCL. It was an NYCL during COVID. So it was a 2-team youth tournament in North Carolina. They had a tripod on a table with the phone on a Facebook Live, and they said, just talk into it. And I talked into it for about 4 hours as they played their 30 over game, or however long that game took. But 4 hours for, I think, like a week straight, I was just talking into that phone. And then, Peter's always kind of one of those big inspirations that you look at. Nate was a big part of my journey as well early on. I remember, Nate, we did that red, white, and blue series on your YouTube, kind of sent me a couple of video game clips, and he had me talk over them, sent me a little script to talk over as well. So a lot of little moments like that kind of come in and, just kind of push you in a direction that you don't know how far that direction is going to take you. And, just more and more things happen. I think I got very lucky with the timing of everything. Minor league cricket kind of picked up in 2021. So when I started was about 2020, and then a year later, minor league cricket happens. And so it was just kind of a good time for me. And I remember the first time I met Peter was at Church Street Park, out by the square. And I was kind of a fan. I was fanboying, and I was trying to like hone it into. He was talking to Nate. I think Nate and Peter kind of conversed a couple of times, and I was like, oh my God, it's Peter Della Penna sitting there with the camera and whatnot. And then I got to work with Peter a little bit in the end of 2021 during the USA series that they had with Ireland, and then especially during, I think Peter and I really got close during that ODI series down in Musa, where we had like about 100 overs straight together when Andrew Leonard got sick. We saw the USA Nepal tie from a situation where they should have never tied that match. And so, just kind of a lot of moments like that. Nate and I have obviously done so much minor league cricket together, and then starting the pod and doing so much stuff on that front as well. So, you meet a lot of people, and I think, Peter he said that a rising tide floats all boats, and he's not just saying that. It's something that he truly believes, and you see it in his actions. Very open from day one about, trying to help me. Nate was always that same way with me. So I had a lot of great people in my life try to, push me up and help me. Andrew Leonard was another one of those guys who just was always kind of looking out for me. And I felt very fortunate to have those individuals in my life, and I think it's kind of helped me get to the point where I am now. And Peter's definitely paved the way, and I'm hoping that, you know, as we start to pave the way as well, we can open a little bit some more channels and more water will flow through, and everyone will be able to, you know, kind of jump in on this USA Cricket thing, and hopefully USA Cricket can continue to grow to where we have enough to feed all the mouths that are trying to get in there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's such a key thing to have mentors, right, in your life and around you that can actually guide you through their own struggles that, you know, can stop you from falling into those pitfalls that they may have fallen into, right? So for me, I think that's really the objective, is to be mentors, right? To people around us, to be a community that's united. So we can show a stronger front and have a voice that is heard across the board, and we can make our voices known for what we want to achieve for the USA Cricket, right? So with that, obviously we have Nate as well, right? So Nate, I want to get your perspective, man, on obviously your shift and your journey. You know, you've got a very unique perspective in all of this, right? You're a baseball player, collegiate baseball player, made a switch, fell in love with cricket. What happened that made that switch, man? Because that's a pretty big switch from baseball to cricket.
I was in my early 30s. I wanted to actually, I played in college, but I hadn't played baseball since I was 22 at this point. So I joined the local baseball league here in Raleigh, and I played a season of that. And I realized I was hurting myself a lot because like I was pulling my groin a lot, which is weird because I was playing a lot of ice hockey at the time. But I was like, you know what? I think I'm done with baseball. I love it, but I want to find something new. And so I was already in this mindset. I wasn't out looking for cricket, but I was already in this mindset of trying to find a new thing. And then one day I went to visit headquarters where I work in Baltimore. I went up to visit some folks I work with, and a lot of Indian guys I work in IT. They were talking about the World Cup. It was 2015. You know, they're talking about their fantasy league. And I was like, oh, why are they talking about fantasy? And I'm thinking fantasy football. And I'm like, this, you know, it's March or whatever. And so I was like, what are you guys talking about? They're like, oh, it's cricket. The World Cup's happening. And they're all standing around the water cooler, basically drinking chai. We had a lot of Indian guys on this up in headquarters. So I was like, let me see something, you know, show me. I want to learn about it. So the first clip I ever saw had just happened, and it was Wahab Riaz and Shane Watson. It was that famous spell. And that was the very first cricket I ever saw that was contemporary that I actually cared enough to pay attention to. And I watched this and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, to me, this was like, it was, the intensity was unbelievable. The drama, it was a very long clip. It broke down. It was, I don't know where this clip is because you can't find it now, but it was like, he comes in the middle, you know, and he's vulnerable. And Wahab Riaz is on top of his game and he's just burning it in there.
He was firing in that spell, man. Yeah.
He was firing it in, and finally Shane Watson takes him on, and he's dropped a deep fine leg, and just the whole thing about everything about it, the drop, the intensity, the Wahab Riaz clapping in his face from 15 feet away at the end of his run up. I was like, all I could think about was like Nolan Ryan at that moment, like how intimidating he was. I was just like, I gotta try this. I mean, I wanted to be the batter. I wanted to be in this situation where you're being challenged. So it's violent. It's nasty. I guess that's why I'm into cricket, because I guess I'm a masochist. You know, but I really wanted to give it a shot. So the first thing I did when I got home was I Googled cricket in my area. And the World Cup was ongoing. I was actually up at 4 a.m. watching the scorecard because I couldn't find a video of it anywhere. I couldn't find video of it anywhere. I couldn't find a stream of it anywhere. So I'm watching the scorecard, trying to understand the game in the middle of the night. So I found a local team. I Googled Raleigh Cricket. The Raleigh Royals Cricket Club shows up. So I email them and I get a reply from Aaman's dad. So I go to the cricket ground. I meet the team. You know, I'm like, hey, I want to play. And they're like, yeah, come on out, join us. They were very welcoming, very friendly, but it was tough to get chances. I got to tell you, Aaman knows what I'm talking about. But and Aaman was there, and we actually threw a football around, and we talked about Tom Brady. He was 12, I think. Was it? You were 12 years old?
Yeah, I think I was 12. Yeah.
And I spent most of my time probably throwing a football around with Aaman. Anyways, eventually I actually played in some of the games. I would go to practice. I think I practiced with them for over a year before I got in a game because I wanted to learn it. My first over was a double wicket maiden, and that was my first bowling over. And I think graciously I got away with a little bit of chuck in action, maybe, but
All right. No, in league, man, everybody chucks.
Yeah, but I mean, like that. I don't. It's hard to top that. I still haven't had an outing as good as that one over was. But yeah, just the experience of being around the team outside, playing a game with a bat and ball, learning how to play, learning how to catch, learning how to bat and bowl, and all of it. I loved how intensive it was. I loved how I accepted that it was going to be a long road to learn. And I really liked that. I liked all of that. Yeah. So then I got involved in local cricket. I wanted to learn more about. The funny thing is, I actually learned about Church Street Park before I learned about Team USA. That seeing Church Street Park was what made me want to play cricket even more. Was like, oh yeah, I got to play. This is beautiful. This is it. And it was coming along then. It wasn't what it is today. Then I was like, well, let me learn about about American cricket, and that's when I discovered Peter's writings. Through him, I think the first player I really read about was Stephen Taylor, because I wanted to learn about somebody who grew up here, who started playing cricket and grew up in the USA. And yes, his family's Jamaican, but he grew up in Florida, and his family wanted him to play baseball, and he played cricket instead. And I was like, this is my kind of guy. I got to learn about this. So yeah, I got into that. And then fast forward a lot of things until 2020, when COVID hit. I was looking for something to take my mind off of this stuff that was happening in the world that I couldn't change. I couldn't change COVID. I couldn't change. And it was so frustrating to me. And so I thought, let me dive into cricket a little bit, take my mind off it. I got an idea from Peter. Actually, Peter had tweeted about what he thought Team USA should do to prepare to select their team, and he proposed a red, white, and blue series where the best 3 teams in the country of players eligible for USA get together and they play a tournament. And so I was like, well, I took Cricket 18, the video game, and I made these 3 teams, and I did research and reading as much as I could about all the players in the country, and I talked to players to get some information. I talked to so many players to get info on all the guys in the US, and I basically created almost like a little mini database sort of in these 3 teams of who I thought might be the best teams. Made a whole YouTube series about it. I didn't like the way my voice sounded, so I got Aaman to do the commentary for me. And at the time, Aaman was doing his podcast every single day, his sports-related podcast. And so I got him to do it. I was like, man, he's good at this. And then we started doing commentary together with the Raptors. I remember the first season with the Raptors I'm on, we had probably 6 people in the commentary tent cycling in and out. And he's the one that can actually make something out of this. And I remember pushing for that. Barbara loved that idea. And also it was like, I was hardly getting a word in edgewise with any of the other guys. I was like, I'm going to let me at least talk a little bit. So yeah, we've been doing commentary for the Raptors ever since. We've been doing, the 3 of us have a lot of history together, and it's great. And then also Aaman Patel too. I got to give him a shout out. He just can't be here because we already have like a perfect Brady Bunch square thing going on right here with all 4 of us. There's nowhere to put him.
yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, shout out to Smith, but that's a wonderful story, man. That story again is one thing that's common amongst all these stories is the passion, right? The passion, and you guys have worked through some tough times to really get to where you guys are, right? So it's awesome, and now we obviously want to see the growth of cricket in the USA, right? I mean, it's been a slow progress. Looking at our current landscape, what areas, Peter? I'm going to put this on you first because you've been doing this the longest. So what areas of improvement do we see happening in the next 5 years? I'm not sure what kind of an answer I'm going to get from you, but what kind of growth do you envision in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years, well, this is something that is a constant refrain from me and Nate and Aaman and other people. If you're looking at not just the next 5 years but beyond, you've got to correct the balance between male players and participants across America and female participants, players across America. You don't have to be a fan of women's sports to want that to happen. It's just purely in the best interest of cricket in general. I mean, you could be the biggest misogynist in America, and yet if you understand how businesses operate and how businesses grow, if you cut off women's cricket, you're cutting off 50% of your potential market base, whether that's as fans or as players or as other participants in the cricket ecosystem. And so it's just bad business sense. I mean, you can be a fan of women's cricket. You can think women's cricket is the worst thing to ever happen to cricket and to happen to sports. I don't care which stance you take, or if you have another stance that fits somewhere in between those two ends of the spectrum. The reality is, if you want cricket to grow, or any business to grow for that matter, if you're cutting off 50% of your potential client base and market base, you're going to fail. At the moment, cricket in America is 99.9% skewed towards men in terms of the participation base. And you look at the figures that are quoted at league level, we laugh about these figures that could be anywhere from 50,000 to 200,000, and there could be 5 million or 10 million or 15 million or 25 million or 50 million cricket fans, depending on which magic fairy pixie dust is sprinkled to enhance that figure. And any of those figures, more or less 99% of the figures, are made up of men or male. That is just not a recipe for success and a recipe for successful growth in the sport. So if you want cricket to become an NCAA sport, if you want cricket to become a sport that's going to get municipal funding, not just rely on private funding, and private funding is wonderful. I think the things that Saki Muhammad has done and that Tanvir Ahmed has done, and that other people have done to fund cricket privately, I think those things are wonderful. Okay, and those people should be commended for the efforts that they've made to help develop facilities. Okay, but the reality is, if you want public funding, and that's whether that's a Church Street Park ground, or whether that's Lauderhill, or whether that's any other facility around the country at club level or a stadium size level, attitudes of politicians and municipal funders and people who are the decision makers who help formulate these things, they all have a viewpoint that goes in line with Title IX. And for people who are not familiar with Title IX, Title IX is essentially the government statute that was passed 50 plus years ago that says anything that involves federal funding, you cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. And that was originally intended for educational purposes, so that if you were building a new school or a new dormitory at a university, if you built a male dormitory, you had to build a female dormitory. If you had, $5 million earmarked for male educational resources, you had to have another $5 million earmarked for female educational resources in whatever shape that came in. But an unintentional consequence is the impact it's had on sports and university sports. And that goes down to high school level, that goes down to municipal level. Okay. And one of the reasons why cricket has not become a Division I NCAA scholarship sport for men is the fact that you've got loads of men across the country playing cricket. There's no women in the pipeline. Okay. And until that gets fixed, that's got to be the number one target area for coaches, academy operators, anybody else involved with cricket. They have to really take increasing the female playing numbers seriously, or else the whole ecosystem is going to suffer. So if you want men's cricket to grow, you might be hyper focused on men's cricket, and you might say, I'm only following the USA men in Netherlands. I don't care about the USA women's national championships that are going on in Texas. I just want to talk about men's cricket. Well, good for you. Okay, you can have that point of view if you want, but the reality is, if you're not really caring about what's going on with the women in Texas, then you don't sound like somebody who cares about the sport growing overall in America. And those kind of attitudes and philosophical approaches in a lot of places in America, from league level on up, need to change in order for the sport to grow in the next 5 years and beyond.
I'd like to just add something there. Absolutely. We don't hear enough about the ICC seems to understand that we need the women's game to improve here in the USA. All around the world, we do. I think they at least part of the ICC seems to really understand that. USA Cricket Board understands it sometimes, it seems like. I just wanted to point out here, Nitesh from Broken Cricket Dreams cricket blog. You can find him on Twitter, cricket_broken. He had a really cool little article about, I asked the NCAA if cricket can become an official NCAA sport. Here's what I found out. And it breaks down the whole pathway for cricket to become a sport in the NCAA, and it heavily focuses almost exclusively on women's. We need more women playing cricket here. If we want, everybody talks about getting cricket in schools. Well, it's a question of chicken and the egg type of thing. You do need it in the NCAA eventually at some point, but it's a long road. We're looking at the fact that we're probably closer to test status somehow than we are to having this in the NCAA, because we need 100 times more girls playing cricket regularly, often. And then we need to take the proper steps of creating clubs and sustaining the clubs and sustaining 20 plus clubs, 40 plus clubs for a very long period of time before we even get to NCAA championship level, where the NCAA actually honors the sport as an official sport. So it's a long road. And I just wanted to plug Broken Cricket Dreams cricket blog, because he did a great job summarizing that all in one place for everybody.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, I think in that article it said one of the responses he got was essentially that you need a minimum of 20 teams for men and women. And he looked at some of the other sports recently that have gotten NCAA Division I status for women's sports, and that includes ice hockey, and I think wrestling is close to it. And the minimum threshold is 20 teams. And I think sometimes cricket administrators get overwhelmed because they look at NCAA football, or they look more probably often at NCAA basketball, and they see, oh, there's 320 or 330 NCAA Division I basketball teams. Like, we'll never get cricket to become an NCAA sport because we're never going to get 300 universities playing cricket. And you don't need to. You don't need to get overwhelmed. It can be as few as 20 that qualifies it as a varsity sport. And I think because they get overwhelmed, they just feel like they think, oh, we need it to be played in all 50 states, or we need it to be played in these many pockets.
No. And
you look at sports like lacrosse or ice hockey, for example, those are extremely regional, confined, pocketed sports. You've got a heavy concentration in New England and the Northeast. You've got some in kind of Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin. You've got some kind of in the Mid-Atlantic down the Carolinas, where Duke has been a national power, and North Carolina and Johns Hopkins and lacrosse and all that. You've got a case like where Arizona State has an NCAA Division I ice hockey team. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but they have one. But that doesn't mean that. And you've got several Division I ice hockey teams in Alaska, but you don't have any in Florida, as far as I know. You do have one in Alabama. I think Alabama Huntsville has a NCAA Division I hockey team. So you get some weird cases, but across the board, there's only about, I think, 55 or 60 NCAA Division I ice hockey teams. And even a university like Penn State only became Division I in ice hockey a couple years ago. I had a cousin who played club hockey for Penn State. He was a goalie on the Penn State ice hockey team before it had NCAA Division I status, and they just played club matches against other teams from other universities regionally around Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. And then I think 5 years or 7 years after he graduated, Penn State finally got NCAA Division I varsity status. And you think to yourself, geez, Penn State, that's a huge state university, How could they not have ice hockey as a sport? Well, they didn't. I mean, there was no requirement. Some other Big Ten universities, Ohio State, Michigan State always had ice hockey teams, but there was no requirement that said Penn State had to. But they do now. But the point is, if cricket only needs to meet a threshold of 20, it's not a case of you need cricket in Alaska, and you need cricket in Wyoming, and you need cricket in Montana. No, if you've got pockets right now where cricket is heavily focused in California, North Carolina, Texas, Florida, New York, New Jersey, you might only need to focus on getting an NCAA Division I program get them started at UNC, NC State, Duke, go to Texas A&M, go to University of Houston, go to UT Austin, go to UCLA, go to USC, and a couple other places in California, go to San Jose State. I mean, how many cricketers do you know, Nate, and I'm on that are students at San Jose State? It seems like half the under 19 program in Northern California are students at San Jose State. That shouldn't be hard to get 20 universities up to speed, but it is hard because of the lack of women. The problem is you need to get 20 universities to have enough athletes on the female side, and that's where the focus needs to be enhanced.
And also, I'd like to say there's a lot of talk often about cricket competing with other sports for attention, or trying to get – a lot of people focus on trying to get baseball fans to convert to cricket fans instead of like accepting cricket as just another good sport to watch. I think none of that, nobody ever talks about that with the colleges, because everybody knows that the colleges have so many sports. I think if you look at what Penn State had to do to make their program from a club program to an NCAA program, they just sustained. It's very grassroots there, the way that they went about it. The club took care of itself. They promoted themselves. They made themselves a part of the campus, made themselves a part of the student experience there. They were competing against a lot of very popular sports at Penn State. And so if you took the approach that, oh yeah, well, we'll never get there because the Penn State's a football school. If they had taken that approach, they would have never gotten a hockey program. But they didn't take that approach. And now they have, not only they have a great hockey program, they have a phenomenal facility. And I think that they're a great example to me they're a great inspiration to me for cricket and what cricket can be if people just dare to dream and dare to stick with it and grow things in the right way and focus on quality and focus on community and experience.
Absolutely on point, man. It's all about building that interest, right? From the grassroots. We go back to that grassroots work because I'm going to, again, highlight my personal club here, New Milford Cricket Club, where, last 5-6 years where we've focused on developing a youth female team. We've have now over 15-20 females, young cricketers under 15, under 14 that are going to be going to college in the next 5 years, right? So it's that type of a growth in the developmental process when these local clubs are focused not just on their own time to play their own cricket, but also to develop a community, provide pathways for these young cricketers just to give them some options, because these young females that we have playing cricket, they wouldn't have been playing cricket if we didn't have this community kind of bring this cricket thing out in the open, right? And through the help of our mayor and everything. So it's been very awesome to see that we've grown the numbers here in New Milford, and that example should be done across, all clubs to grow that number, because females need to play cricket. We have to support that growth. So again, for me, from my perspective, it starts on the grassroots level, right? But how can we build that interest right from starting points? Because again, we have very few females playing, maybe females moving, within our parts of, culturally, if they're, Indian born or Indian based family or a Pakistani based family, maybe those, families can have their kids come out and play cricket. But what about, general people from here, right, that can go out and understand cricket right from the grassroots? We don't have that type of education. So how can we get there, though? I know it's a long road, but a couple of things that pop in your head that we can do to make it happen. Each of you guys, I want to hear a couple of things from.
Well, I think that every community needs to look at what's unique to them and to their situation. And I think people have to understand how their local governments work. And a lot of people are involved at crickets at the grassroots level in academies. And youth sports in general now is a business. It's a business for a lot of people. So you have academies who need to make money, who need to pay their coaches, and the coaches who want to live off of coaching. That's fun. That's just the way that is. At the same time, those academies have to look at new communities and look at them opportunistically. Like Peter said before, regardless of what your ideology is, the truth is if women aren't playing cricket, cricket's not going to go anywhere. The same thing goes for new communities. Regardless of whether or not you want to have a business, regardless of whether or not you want to be a coach who lives off of this, new people coming in shouldn't be a threat to you. I think some of the local leagues in the U.S. could make a beginner league for kids or for young adults or for teenagers, and encourage them to bat and bowl and bat badly and bowl badly, and find ways to make it fun. And it's just like golf. You go out and play golf, you could suck like crazy, but out of all those 120 shots you took that day, you put one 7 feet from the flag, from a different spot. You're back. You're coming back the next time, and you're gonna hit another 120.
For me, it's just getting it in front of the most eyes as you can, and getting it onto TV screens for people to watch. I think a lot of people from my generation here, they will look at the 2011 World Cup as something that inspired them to play cricket. And obviously, Nate, you saw Wahab Riaz bowling that fiery spell to Shane Watson, and you were hooked, and you got to meet Shane Watson, right? That was kind of a full circle moment for you. So I think when you are, and Peter, same for you, right? You got to see the Ashes up close and in person, and then you couldn't stop watching it. So the more eyes you get on it, the more ways you can get it in front of somebody, the better. And I think what Major League Cricket did with putting it on those regional sports networks are, kind of a right step in the right direction. Because you're putting it in front of a local person in New York who might not turn on cricket, but if they're at a sports bar, oh my God, hey, what's this going on TV? Okay, let me watch it. When we were in Florida for the World Cup, and Nate, me and you were there, we had a bunch of folks come up to us who were there for a conference, saw this weird game on the TV, and all these people of different accents yelling at the TV. they came up to us and said, "What's happening over there?" And we got into a conversation that lasted about 6 hours until 2 in the morning about cricket, and they were kind of hooked in. So I think when you can put it in front of people, that's when they'll start to, kind of sink their teeth into it and start to really accept it. And then it's something that they can come back to. So I think the more you can more accessible you make it on a television screen, the easier it'll be for individuals, along with obviously giving them opportunities to play the game.
For me, it's a kind of a combination of parts of Nate's and Aaman's answers. I think one of the things that I definitely experienced, and it made me kind of smile hearing Nate talk earlier about it and hearing some of the things he was referencing right now, is that the very, very passionate cricket coaches, captains, administrators in America at club level and league level, they get so caught up in this mentality of everybody who's playing cricket needs to be awesome in order to play and be on the field. There's never well, I shouldn't say never, but very rarely is it a case of encouraging or inviting somebody onto the field just for the sake of enjoying cricket, for cricket's sake, and like Nate said, allowing them to play badly. Like cricket captains at club level, I mean, come on, you're playing on 6-inch high grass and artificial wickets. You can't tell me with a straight face that this is elite cricket in a lot of areas and that you have to pick the absolute best 11. And, we can't really pick you if we've never seen you play before because God forbid you suck. As if nobody who's played club cricket in America or anywhere else in the world has never sucked before. Or they've never gotten out first ball, and irrational fear, like, oh God, what happens if we let somebody who's never played before take the field for the first time? God forbid. Like, what can of worms are we going to be opening here if that happens? And I went through that experience. Nate said he had to practice for about a year before he took field, and whether that was voluntary or involuntary, I went through something very similar in the sense that in Omaha, I had one person, I would argue, who was very much in my corner, who was the club captain, club president named Bosker. Over the course of my first summer of playing or trying to play in 2006, he got into countless fights and arguments with the rest of the members of the club over where I should be batting and whether I should be bowling, if I should be allowed to bowl, whether or not my action was clean or whether I was chucking like Nate talks about. And, it was... There was almost a brawl that happened because most games I was batting, 9, 10, or 11 in my first summer. One game in September, Bosker decided to send me out to open the batting, and there was almost a mutiny on the team. It was holy shit! Like, what possessed you to send Peter Della Penna to open the batting? Like, what's wrong with you? And I went out there and scored 20, I think it was. And I got out because I thought, I've got to 20. I'm seeing the ball well. I'm just going to start swinging at everything. I went from trying to leave and playing like test match cricket where I was shouldering arms and having good technique. And I thought, I'm seeing it sweet. I can just swing at everything. And I had to swing across the line and got bowled. And like Bosker yelled at me when I came off the field. He was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you were batting so well. Like, why didn't you batting the way you were batting? And I was like, no, like I wanted to hit some more boundaries. He's like, no, you want to stay in until you get out. Like, no, you should have kept batting. You were doing great. I was like, great. It's like, great. I only scored 20. It's terrible. Like, great. And, but he was excited for me, having given me the opportunity. And, I didn't make a fool out of myself at this point in the season. And, I started that whole season, but this was the 6th month of the season. Finally, for once, he let me open the batting or sent me to open the batting. And some of the guys were furious about it. How dare you? I'm 10 times the batter that Peter is. And what the hell is wrong with you? How could you? It's humiliating for us that you sent him to open the batting. And, how could you do that? And then in the very last match of the season, I was finally allowed to bowl. They put me on to bowl. I'd been bowling. I bowled consistently in the nets. It took me like 3 months to be able to get to the point where I was bowling with a straight arm and I was bowling off spin. And then it took me another 3 months after that for them to feel comfortable that not only was I bowling with a straight arm, but I was bowling accurately enough and threatening enough where I could actually get somebody out. And my first time I was brought on, very last match of the season, I took a wicket with my very first ball and I didn't see it happen because what happened was I floated up this juicy off break, looping off break, and the guy prodded forward, beat the outside edge, and the ball went over the stumps, and it just missed the off stump bail. And I turned around and was like, ah! And I turned my head like this, and all of a sudden I can hear the bails get whipped off and the stumps break. And I wasn't looking, and apparently the guy prodding forward, he dragged his back foot out and he got stumped. And so I missed my first wicket because I wasn't looking, because I was so in agony, because like I was like, oh, I was so close to getting wicket my first ball. I almost bowled him off stuff, and then all of a sudden off. And I was like, oh, holy shit, I just took away my first ball. It's amazing. And then I had another guy caught on the boundary. I took 2 wickets that day. That was the last home match of the season. And then we were invited to go to a tournament in Kansas, in Wichita. They deemed that my bowling was good enough that I could, bowl a couple overs in that tournament. I think I bowled 2 overs in that tournament, and I got hit for a couple sixes, and then I was promptly yanked off. It took them 6 months essentially to wrap their heads around the concept of getting me to bowl or getting me to bat above 8 or 9. Opening the batting almost created Armageddon in our club. So to Nate's point, allowing people to not just play cricket, but to play cricket badly. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Why aren't you just encouraging them to play full stop? What is this irrational fear? There needs to be a change in mentality about that. If you're playing in Division 1 of the SCCA in California and you're playing on turf wickets, and that's a very high standard of cricket, I get it. Okay, you're not going to pick me to go as a first-time player to take up any spot in the 11. I get it. Okay, but there are so many other standards and variations of the quality of cricket in this country. If you're playing Division D, Division E, Division 5 standard cricket in whatever league across the country, you cannot tell me with a straight face somebody who's new to the game doesn't deserve a shot because they've never played cricket before. No, we have to be giving opportunities first and foremost to the guy who's been playing for 15 years, who has sucked for 15 years, but he loves his cricket way more than this other guy who's just shown up for the first time. That needs to change. And then if you want to grow the game locally. And then to Aaman's point, and really emphasizing the social aspects of cricket. He was talking about, meeting people in bars and, interacting with people, and they come across this game and what's this weird game and why is it on the bar, and tell us more about it, and other, social interactions. When I went to my first test match in Australia, I would look around and there were people asleep, and there were people reading newspapers and reading books, and there were some, people who brought needlework to sew. Other people were watching every ball. Okay, I was one of those people. By day 3 of the test match, my ass was extremely sore because I was sitting in the same position for 7 hours, 3 days in a row. And I thought, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I can do this for another 2 days. My ass is killing me. There were people who were having a good time drinking beers, just, coming with their friends and just, chugging beers. And there were people who were chugging beers to the point where after tea time on the Saturday of the test match I went to, there was a streaker who obviously decided the on-field bat and ball entertainment wasn't enough, and he was going to provide some more entertainment for the crowd by streaking on the field. I wound up convincing some of my American friends that I was living with in Australia during my semester abroad, like, you got to come to a cricket match. It was amazing. Why was it amazing? There was a streaker. I didn't say anything about the cricket and like Ricky Ponting scoring a century or Glenn McGraw taking wickets or Shane Warne taking wickets. I was like, there's a streaker. And like, if there was a streaker, like, that's amazing. Where are you going to go next time? And, like, why was there a streaker? I was like, well, clearly he was drunk and he, had, 10 too many, not just 1 too many. Like, oh, you can drink beers at cricket? Yes, you can drink beers at cricket. There's beer everywhere at cricket. They were making beer snake. They had, there was like thousands of plastic cups that were being formed to create a beer snake, and that was the other entertainment in the crowd. And like, a beer snake, that sounds amazing. Like, I want to be part of the beer snake. And whether it's playing, like I talked about before, from a recreational standpoint, or watching as a fan, the hardcore cricket aficionados, again, I think sometimes they overwhelm people, both from a playing standpoint and from a watching standpoint, with this outrageous, really irrational demand that you must know the LBW law in the first 5 minutes of watching cricket, or else, no, you're not welcome. Or your elbow isn't high enough and you have to have a straight bat if you're going to swing a cricket bat on the field. You can't swing it however you feel like it, whether it's you swing it like a baseball bat, or you swing it like a tennis racket, or you swing it like a golf club, or you swing it like any other sport you ever played in your life. No, Sonny, you need to have your front foot and your eye over the ball and your head over the ball and your high elbow like this. And that's cricket. And whatever you're doing, that's not cricket. Like, no, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and cricket means different things to different people. And if I don't want to have a high elbow and I don't want to play with a straight bat, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to reverse sweep, as Aaman knows. Reverse sweeping is kosher. And if you're watching the game, yes, it's good to watch every ball. But if you miss a ball, it's not the end of the world. If you want to go drink a beer, or you want to chat with your friends and you just want to socialize at cricket, whether it's in a bar or inside an actual live cricket ground, how many amazing things were happening inside the World Cup grounds and in MLC, if you didn't know every single thing about cricket, you could still have a good time. I mean, what's not to love when Nate Hayes is at one ground being the PA announcer and Aaman Patel is in another ground being the in-ground stadium host, revving up the fans? What's not to love?
In my case, I was telling the fans that it was time to leave because there was too much water on the field to play.
Had to make sure I ran inside before he made that announcement. Otherwise, I felt some fans would have thrown me into the water on the field.
But, your point about, you got to tell fans to leave. But, one of those fans that you told to leave, Chuck LaFleur, Chuck the super fan who showed up to his first match to watch USA play Pakistan. Again, Chuck didn't know anything about cricket. And suddenly he was like almost becoming a mini viral sensation, at least in American cricket circles, because he had heard about USA beating Pakistan. And he said, USA beat Pakistan? USA's good at cricket? I don't know jack shit about cricket, but I want to support USA in another sport. And I'm going to show up and I'm going to wear my red, white, and blue. And I just want USA to kick ass. And because it was raining and before Nate told Chuck and all the other fans at the USA Ireland game that they had to leave because there was too much water on the field, what was Chuck doing? To wrap up the point, Chuck was chugging as many beers as he could because he paid for a VIP ticket, and the VIP ticket included unlimited alcohol. And he saw that there was probably not going to be a match being played, and he said, I'm taking as many of these Modelos as I can chug down before they tell us to go home.
I think they waited every day until the beer was gone before they called the games off. It seemed like that was what they were waiting for.
Man, that's some stories, man. So we've had an amazing conversation here. I want to talk to you guys about some cricket politics. So let's get into a couple of points. I know we could talk all night sitting here, guys. So a couple of things that you guys want to bring up, anything about, USA politics, anything that we can do to improve the game you guys already talked about. But there's political challenges and effectiveness of USA cricket. There's the administration, there's the Major League Cricket. So I know there's a lot, but couple of things that you guys think that might be the most important things on the list.
One thing I'd like to say is I would love it if it felt like we were always building towards something, even if it's just one step every year. If it just felt like there was some continuity from year to year where we could just grow things slow and steady, I would just absolutely love it. I'd like to see the national governing body kind of understand what its limits are, produce a good national championship every year for men's and a good national championship every year for women's. And it doesn't have to be that you have a T20 national championship every year or one day. I mean, let minor league be the T20 men's national championship, for goodness sake. I'd like to see this happen every year. If we can do that just consistently, it'll mean a lot to the players if they know what to rely on. Our biggest obstacle nationally is our infrastructure, and some of the challenges that we talked about and the ways to connect with fans and bring in new fans. I think some of those, the solution partly lies in improved infrastructure. I think you'll see more grassroots actually happening when there's like a landmark venue around, and that venue's going to need more than just a month of Major League Cricket to sustain it and to get the municipality to want to pay money to sustain this stadium, because the league, Major League Cricket's going to have to make deals with cities and with cities and towns like Grand Prairie. Great spot. They did a good job there. And you're going to need to fill that venue around the calendar year as long as you can. And so that, with more infrastructure, if Major League Cricket kind of ramps that up a little bit, we get more infrastructure, we'll get more place to play all the better higher end cricket, and I think it'll trickle down a lot from there. That's kind of one focus that I think everybody should understand, is the infrastructure can solve a lot of these questions.
Yeah, Nate, this is courtesy of being in Fuquay this weekend. These two diving on some of those 6-inch.
They got MPOX down there now. In Fuquay, not only is it not community oriented, but they got MPOX.
But for me, I think infrastructure is very important. I think that's probably number one on the priority list. If you improve that, I think you're able to play a lot more. I think, speaking of governing bodies, I think it's the biggest thing I want to see is some egos left at the door, and the want, desire, and ability to collaborate, and the willingness to collaborate with the USA Cricket, Major League Cricket coming together and collaborating on something, or just not being afraid to collaborate and work together to grow the game, right? And I know that's a tall ask for whatever reason. It doesn't seem to happen very often, but when they do happen, great things happen. And I think the more we can get of that, the more we can utilize these. We have so many of these leagues popping up, so many of these tournaments that are held to a pretty high standard. The U.S. T20, not the U.S. T20, the USPL was very highly run last season. All the players really liked it. The broadcast looked great. The umpires enjoyed themselves. Minor league and major league have been very well run for the past couple of years. So as a governing body, if USA Cricket can kind of leverage those and utilize that, you can save costs and you can promote high level cricket, and then also funnel costs into other directions and other fields. So I think the more collaboration and the openness to accepting help and being kind of this big effort to push cricket in the right direction is kind of the biggest thing you want to see from the governing body.
Part of this might seem big picture, but for me, it's very much micro rather than macro level. And I know some people probably going to laugh at this. I don't care. To me, you got to start small. And following up on the infrastructure point, to me, if I were the governing body from a politics standpoint, I would mandate. There's some people who say, oh, we should be mandating every tournament of a certain standard has to be played on turf wickets, or every tournament has to be played of a certain standard to really evaluate players and have stats that are meaningful and can be creditable and evaluated for higher honors and to progress in a zonal pathway to national pathway, whatever. And those are all true. But for me, it starts with mandating that every tournament, national tournament, whether it's a USA Cricket National Championship or a USA Women's Championship, Under 19 Championship, Under 15 Championship, every one of those national events, before we are not cavemen. Why are we playing cricket at grounds that have no toilets where you got to go pee in the woods? And if you're a poor woman playing one of these tournaments, that's not an option. I'm sorry. And I say this all kidding aside. Part of the reason why the USA Cricket National Championships for the women and the under 19 women are happening in Grand Prairie right now is because they have some fantastic toilets. Let me tell you, those are some of the finest toilets at any cricket ground in America. And that is something that it's a deal breaker for women. You talk to women's players and they have said that some of their friends who used to play cricket stopped playing cricket, or they won't go to certain events that are played around the country if they know that the ground doesn't have changing rooms and or doesn't have toilets, because they can't just go in the woods. And changing rooms, they want to have a change room to feel comfortable, that they don't have to change out in the open, that they don't have to get jump into somebody's car. They need an SUV to jump into the back seat and change in the back of the SUV, or to have 8 teammates hold up a group of towels to create almost like an impromptu shield so that they have a screen to change behind. It shouldn't have to be resorting to those tactics to make people just feel comfortable and feel welcome at a cricket ground. And so, I mean, one of the great joys of covering cricket at Rotterdam, at VOC Rotterdam, and at Voorburg Cricket Club this week, my God, VOC Rotterdam has some of the finest toilets I've ever gotten to use at any cricket ground on the associate scene anywhere in the world that USA has played at. And I thought to myself, and you're gonna laugh, but it's true. One of the reasons I love Church Street Park, and I hope that it's one of the reasons Aaman and Nate love Church Street Park, they've got a brick and mortar toilet, and it's a really nice one. The soap is full. The toilet paper is there. You don't have to worry about the simple necessities. And Grand Prairie is the same thing. I mean, if you want cricket to grow in this country, and you want it to be something that's a family environment, a community environment, okay, one of the things that new players that are recruited to the sport from other sports, an NCAA Division I former softball or field hockey or a golf athlete or a gymnastics athlete or a tennis athlete, whatever, if you're looking to recruit girls from those sports, there's no toilet for her and there's no place for her to change. And she's accustomed to having access to a a multi-million dollar, $100 million athletic complex on the campus of UNC or NC State, and she's got access to everything she could dream of. And then you're telling her, wait, U.S. national standard for women's cricket is to not even have a toilet or not even have a locker room to change in to want to play a match. You're not going to convince and be successful at recruiting a lot of female athletes from other sports to say, oh, you're going to love cricket. Oh, I love it so much. That I can't even do basic human functions and necessities without humiliating myself. That doesn't make you feel welcome. That's not going to create a community environment. One of the things I showed my wife is British, for people who don't know, and we went for a family function to Houston in the summer of 2023, and I took her around to the cricket grounds in Houston. We took her to Musa and we took her to Prairie View, and one of the things my wife and my daughter said, the very first thing they said when we went out to Prairie View Cricket Complex, which is a wonderful complex. It's got many positives. All the turf wickets, they have 6 turf grounds, but as a mother and a daughter, the first thing they said was, "Daddy, where's the media box? Where do you cover this cricket matches from? I don't see any media box. Where do you plug in the internet? Where do you plug in from that? I don't see it. Where's your media facility? Sorry, I don't have one. I just hold it in my lap." Question number 2, where do you go to the toilet? There's no toilets here, Daddy. And I said, well, I don't go to the toilet. And they said, good God, like now we know why you're a camel, Daddy. We know why you're able to hold it in for 7 or 8 hours at a time, because you have to do that when you go cover these matches at Prairie View. Now we understand Daddy's a camel. Here's the reason why. I could go on forever. I've gone on for quite a bit about just toilets here, but it's a serious issue. And if you're not mandating it as a governing body and saying, all right, put the cricket aside, these are human beings. We have to look at these people as people. And do we want to treat them with dignity and respect? And again, it goes to the broader point of encouraging and welcoming women and families. If you're not treating these people with dignity and respect like human beings, are they going to want to participate in your sport? Oh, yeah. Probably not. So you can talk a lot about the cricket aspects, but
basic necessities. Infrastructure is what it sounds like. From basic to top level is what needs to be added, guys. It was a wonderful conversation tonight. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this, momentous podcast that, we were able to pull off, and hour and 41 minutes into it, and we have not fallen asleep. So, this is not bad. Again, thank you so much, guys. Make sure to the viewers, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to check out the Reverse Scoop shop, where you can support youth cricket development at the grassroots level, where we support a nonprofit of New Milford Cricket Club, puts the money right back into their youth program. So help us support at that level. Guys, Peter, Aaman, and Nate, it was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much again, guys, for a great pod, and we'll do it again next time. Until next time, Nabil Khan, Peter Della Penna, Nate Hayes, and Aaman Patel from the Reverse Scoop, signing off, guys. Have a great night.